All right, you're asking for it, so here it is. Listen to this.
I want you folks laughing at we partners pod, kid. You understand? We in here drinking, singing, swinging, all that shit, dog. Sweating, getting wet, and all that.
Welcome to the 115th episode of the Drinking Partners Podcast. Yes, this is our Tim Tebow episode. Yes, because listen, this is a good analogy. I thought about this hard.
It better be good.
We play a position that doesn't necessarily go with our race. So you don't necessarily see two black guys with a craft beer podcast.
No, you don't.
But at the end of the day, all we do is win. All we do is win.
Okay.
Yeah, see, there we go. Look, I got injured and I got real serious about these sports analogies. I was like, it's all I could contribute for a little while, so I'm going to be going hard. I was sending Dave paragraphs like that in text message, like, yo, this is what you say. This is a great analogy. For those who do not know, I am half of your hosting tandem, Ed Bailey. I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Dave Bracy. Say what up to the people.
What's good with you people? We are the Drinking Partners, and if you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and Google Play under Drinking Partners. 115 episodes, man. We've been asking you. We're going to continue to ask you, man. Hop on iTunes, rate and review. It takes 30 seconds. That's how we let others know that we're doing well. That's how we continue to do well, and that's how we know what we're doing well. So please, rate and review on iTunes, man.
Yeah, you love us. When you see us in the streets, you tell us you love us. So just click on iTunes, rate and reviews, and tell the internet. That's all. Just tell other people.
Yeah, let people know.
Let people know that, hey, these are cool guys.
Hey, they're all right.
We're two bearded gentlemen. You don't meet two bearded gentlemen that roll together that are both cool.
True. Yeah, there's no ugly friends. Yeah, if you're listening right now and you're like, oh man, these guys sound super smooth, that is all due to Epicast Network.
Epicast.
Man, they keep us sounding great. If you're looking to get into, get your own podcast started, you want it to sound better. Maybe you need help promoting an event or want to advertise your product on an award-winning podcast. Such as this one. Some people have told us we were the best in the city, and we just we own it.
Hey man, we're Tim Tebow. All we do is win.
All we do is win. You know what I mean? So if you're looking to any of those services, go to epicastnetwork.com/services, fill out a form, and tell them that the Drinking Partner sent you, man. They'll give you that hookup.
Tell us we sent you. That's a big part in life. Like that's a milestone in life where you can finally send people somewhere. When you can send somebody someplace, you do that with pride.
Yeah,
even if it's Burger King.
When you're a reference, yeah.
Tell LaShonda that you know me. She'll give you some extra fries. She'll upsize you. Like it's just a big thing, man. But tell them you sent it. Tell them that we sent you. They do great work, man.
Yeah, man. They keep this whole thing running, man. They got two of the best podcasts in the city on the network. Shout out to Marta on the Move. Doing her thing. Sister over there. And, the podcast is, the network is growing. So if you want to grow with us, holla at your boys at epicastnetwork.com/services. Events coming up. I don't think we have any events coming up by the time this thing drops.
Yeah, I don't know. We have Comtra April 1st. I don't know if this will drop by then, but we do have Comtra April 29th.
April 29th, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mike Wysocki's on that.
Wysocki, yeah, that's my guy, man. I gotta get on his podcast. Like I want to go. He's been inviting me, and he's like, it's at 6:30 when he records, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I gotta explain that to the wife. Like I gotta change rides. That's what happens with kids, man. You don't have the freedom just to go do stuff. You got to start rearranging shit.
Yeah, it's all scheduled at that
Wear
point.
Wear condoms, fellas. Wear condoms, man.
Get them snips.
Listen, wear condoms. You still gonna bust a nut. Like y'all acting like y'all can't come with condoms on. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But we do have a special announcement. I have been offered a headline night down at the Improv, so I'll be headlining on May 17th. More details to come soon. Look out on the internet for that. Obviously, I'm going to have my boy Dave Bracy on. Epicast, the family's going to be in the building in full effect. It's my first time headlining at the Improv. I just want you all to come out. We're going to make it an affordable night, because I really just want people who listen to the podcast, who've seen me perform, to come out and just celebrate with me, man. Like, this 2017 is just a celebration of life, man.
Yeah,
I'm still
man.
here.
Yeah,
so,
that's huge, man. Like, congrats on that. That's a big deal.
I appreciate that, man. Listen, I had to go down and I got to tell him, like, hey, man, listen. All right, I might not be here too much longer. I was coughing and shit. I went down and look, I was like, I was going to court trial. As soon as somebody, I put all the old gear from the hospital on. I had bandages and a fucking splint on. Ain't nothing wrong with my arm anymore.
Went down in the gown with your ass out still.
Like, ain't no telling how much longer I'll be around. Just give me one night, please.
Hey, man. However you could get it, man. That's huge, man. Like, just watching your progression. From the beginning up until now, man, that's big, man. Congratulations on that.
I appreciate that, man. It's a family affair, though. It ain't just me, man. We're going to get it down. A bunch of, I'm going to obviously book people that I'm really cool with, and it's going to be a hell of a show, man. It's going to be a really, really, really good show. So
it's always a good show. We going to turn that bitch out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do here at the podcast, I mean, obviously we do the podcast and we big up small businesses and local artists, but on the comedy scene, man, we really like to book individuals that we think are pushing the scene forward and moving the scene forward. So come down to my show at the Improv. It's just going to be more of the same, man. Just trying to let you know that, there is a budding or burgeoning comedy scene here, man. You got a lot of talented individuals, and you guys need to go out and see them when it's cheap, because then y'all going to fuck around and go and try to see them, and then $65, $85 a ticket.
They're like, why don't you hook me up with them? Yeah, I mean, the ticket's like, you wasn't with me when the day was $5.
Listen, if I'm charging $65 a ticket, I'm not answering any DMs that have the word hook in it. Like, if I do a filter of the word, like, hook me up. Nah, I ain't hooking you. It's $65. You know how hard it took me to get to this point, man?
True.
But speaking of local entrepreneurs, this is not relevant, but what you drinking on today?
Well, I'm actually drinking on this Southern Tier 2X IPA. Shout out to Southern Tier. They just opened up down on the North Shore. So they're now, officially a local brew. Originally out of New York or whatever, but they are here now brewing in the Berg. So shout out to them. I got this
brewing in the Berg.
Got this it's a heavy variety pack. It's got the Gemini, the 2X IPA, and the Unearthly, and they're all
got that Unearthly over here.
Yeah, they're all between like 8 and 9%. So that's a nice heavy IPAs, 12y, right there. You know what I mean? So
I thought we agreed to all 6% in my first 5 episodes.
Sip slow.
6 and below. You snuck a 9 in on me.
6 upside down is a 9 now.
Yeah, it's true. Hey, my daughter gets it confused all the time, so I guess I can't really complain. Nah, this is really good, man. I got to check out Southern Tier on the north side.
Yeah, I haven't been down there since they opened up. I've been slacking. It's been busy. It's one of those things that like I kept asking, like, is it open yet? And it's like, no, I don't think it's over. They're doing a little something down there, but it ain't open yet. Kept checking, and then they opened, and I completely fucking haven't been down there yet. So
we've been busy, man.
Yeah, it's been busy. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah.
We try to stay busy. Now, we're not as busy as our guests, though.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially, pushing the scene in the whole now. You want to talk about pushing the comedy scene and getting out there. Yeah, our guest today has been doing that for quite some time and does it better than anybody in the city. So
yeah, we're honored. Listen, this is a lot of times now. For some reason, we're booking people who are better at this than us, and we got to stop doing that. You know what I mean? Like, we had the journalists on and shit like that. We don't have the question, and we got the radio personality on now. Like, he gonna come on, he gonna blow your voice away.
Yeah,
like,
your voice
is gonna be second place.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but we have from WDVE, we have Randy Baumann in the building. Say what up to the people.
Hey, it's great to be here. And no, you guys sound great. I'm not gonna come on like the radio guy, with the radio guy voice. Hey, everybody, it's great to be here. Certainly is. You guys have a podcast up here in Allentown, how they're doing some great things.
Oh,
they're doing some great things up here in Allentown. They won't let the tea stop here yet, but soon, one day.
That's a phrase that we hear all the time. Oh, you guys are up in Allentown. They're doing great things in Allentown.
Doing great things up there. You guys stay up there in Allentown, okay? You let us know when it's safe, and we'll be back.
Yeah,
this is radio.
That phrase, when a middle-class white dude tells you they're doing great things up there, that means that was a place that he couldn't go to. Yeah. That's an area that he did not frequent.
No, man, the first time I came out up here, of course, was for Alla Familia, which is like badass, like one of the best Italian restaurants in town, which is right next door to where we are now. Yeah. And when he first opened up there, that dude Jonathan, who's like doing, gangbusters now, when he first opened up, they used to walk you to your car. Oh, and so I had like one night we were like doing like a celebration, like I don't remember what it was, like like the whole show, like we all went out and we brought like Sally Wiggin and a few other people up to do, and like Wiggin. There was a legit deal going down across the street when we were walking out, and Sally was like, "Oh my God, is that a crack deal going on?" I'm like, "Well, you don't identify it if it is, like you just let it happen. There's no."
Mention that in the car.
Right.
Wait until we pull to the car.
Right. We'll talk. Text me about this later on. We don't need to be.
Hey guys, what are you guys doing over there?
We're not on a Universal Studios tour of Allentown. And if you look to your right, there's a crack deal going on.
I used to date a chick like that who would like point out random, because I stayed in the Hill District, and she would come up, she'd be like, "Oh my God, is that a drug addict?" Like, bitch, don't say that to me. I gotta live up in this area. Like, you going home after this? Like, they saw the car you got out of. Like, they gonna fuck with your car.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to mess around with them. But I thought that was so funny. They're close enough to touch. It's not like
we're not in a bulletproof vehicle.
That's right.
Shout out to Sally Wiggin, man. She is my original MILF
Have
crush.
you guys had her on yet?
Well, I have not had her.
You got to make that
I did
happen.
a show. She hosted it, and I did my best to not just like completely melt and fanboy all over her, because I love me some Sally.
She's
Wiggin.
a legend, man.
She is a legend.
Yeah, she's been around a long time. She's done a lot of stuff. She was a hell of a journalist back in the day too. I mean, she's kind of a wacky, crazy person now, but like she's done some really important stuff and continues to do that. But she's just such like she's really I mean this in the best way. She's a wacky lady. Like that sometimes I think it gets lost, the fact that she's actually like a really solid journalist, but she's an entertainer too. Yeah. So she turns that personality on like everybody does a little bit. You know how that goes.
No, she's awesome. I mean, like I said, I've been a fan for quite some time, and
you should get your boy Seaback to get Sally, and then do the 1-2. Wiggin Seaback.
Seaback to connect. Pretty Ricky. If you're listening, hook us up.
Some point I'm gonna have Sally Wiggin on my couch. That's a thing that I've been dreaming of since I was 5.
Just hold on now.
Just the studio couch.
All right. You got.
No, I think you got a shot at both. I ain't kidding.
Here we can see now.
I wouldn't make a podcast of that.
I don't want to sit. I don't want to sit in the room while he's fanboying all over this Sally Wiggin. Like, I'm not gonna be sitting here. I'm
gonna wear a suit to that podcast. You will see me. You're shot.
Yeah, she might not let you come out to Fox Chapel, but she'll come up here and do it.
Or so tell us, a little bit of, how you got into what you do now. For those that are listening at home, maybe you're in Cali or DC or in France trying to learn English by listening to the podcast. You have like one of the most popular radio shows, morning shows, not only in Pittsburgh, but in the country. A lot of comedians, comment on, how like, they go to different cities. They don't do a lot of, call-ins and the whole nine, with radio shows. But like consistently, your show has been, shouted out, in the comedy community as like, you go here and you get on DVE.
Right.
How one did you get into the whole radio thing, and how have you built that into what it is now?
When I graduated from Penn State, I was an accounting major. I took a job with an accounting firm in Pittsburgh. And I came to Pittsburgh and I listened to the DV morning show on my way, getting ready for work. I was one of those people like that had aspirations to do other things, but I thought like, oh, well, you can't be a musician or you can't be a comedian or study improv or do any of that stuff because that's not realistic. Because my old man was like, yeah, you got to pay the bills, and I had to pay for college, and there was just I was not in one of those families that was supportive of like, if you wanted to play football, that was great, but if you were like, I want to be a dancer, like they'd be.
It's so strange that people are so supportive of athletics when the odds are just as slim.
Yeah,
and the end point for that career is the age 22.
Yeah.
Almost for everybody. Yeah. And if you're in the arts at all and you're able to like get a job, ostensibly you could be an artist in any variety of different forms for your entire life. Yeah. But you're not going to play, slot receiver past the age at Edinburgh, past the age of 22.
Yeah,
So,
and you're not going to need pain meds for the rest.
Right.
At the end of your career.
but there was always sort of that, well, the realistic thing here is you use athletics to get an education. And then you go on and do a job that you hate and you slowly drink yourself into.
Yeah, do athletics. Don't pursue the arts. Just do athletics and then become an art teacher. Right. That's what most of them do anyway.
Right. So I listened to that show and I was like, oh man, that was like, it kind of like their radio show at the time was Paulson and Kren were doing the show. And they were great. Unlike anything I'd heard before, and I kind of thought like, oh wow, that's something I would love to do. And I literally said that to my roommate at the time. We were living in Shadyside, and I like had a suit on, like going to do an audit at Mellon Bank when I was like 22 years old. And he's like, well, too late, dipshit. Like you got a suit on and you're going to work. So I managed to get fired pretty quick.
You've chosen this life.
Yeah. And so I went back to Erie to kind of rejoin the band that I had started, a few years before. And then we got kind of serious with the band and started, like I was like, the hell with this. I'm going to do what I love, because I did that for a little under a year before they fired me. And I wanted to make sure I always did something that I wasn't going to hate myself for, because like that was just, I was depressed all the time going to work. I'm like, this sucks.
And you from Erie?
Yeah,
well,
from Erie.
Congratulations for making it out of Erie.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an accomplishment.
Yeah.
It used to be a much different town than it is now. I will say that. I loved growing up in Erie. It was so different from what it is now. And unfortunately, it's just fallen on hard times like a lot of cities like Erie, but that's another story. So anyways, I went to this golf tournament up in Erie one day, and I had no job at the time, and I was just partying with my friends all day at some like celebrity pro-am thing, and my buddy was the bartender in the VIP lounge, and he's like, yo, I'll get you in there. So we went in there, and they had a piano, and I sat down on it and started playing, and I was kind of like a little bit of a long hair, and I looked like I didn't belong there, and I started doing almost like a Howl at the Moon thing, just hammered.
Yeah.
And they kicked me out, and it was like a big deal because the crowd was like really liking it. And the mayor of the town was there at the time, and she was like, "Let him back in," to the cops, and they're like, "No, the club said we got to kick him out." And I was like,
the mayor on your side.
Yeah. She was this woman named Joyce Savacchio, who was this lesbian mayor of Erie, which was a very progressive thing at the time. Except nobody talked about it. It's like, she never found her guy,
Erie's very progressive. See, you always talk shit on Erie. Erie was in front of the movie.
I mean, the thing about Erie is just that lake effect wind that is, it just made, like, I was there for about 5 months between like January and May, and it just was ridiculously ridiculous. Like that lake effect wind. And it's really, I mean, now that they have the burgeoning beer scene, it's easier because you can get shit faced off of good shit and kind of get you through.
That Railbender box stuff back when they first started brewing that. On Thursday nights, they used to do $1 drafts there, $1 pints. Man. So you'd go and have 4 pints there, and
that'll get you through.
More than a start to the night, and
that's less than an extra value meal.
Yeah, it was legit. So anyways, when that whole thing went down, it was like a big scene. And Erie's not very big, so when something like that happens, the guy who did the morning radio show at the rock station up there, Rock 101, was there, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, will you come on the show to talk about like how that all went down?" That was really funny. And I was like, "Oh, sure." And I went on and I met the owner of the radio station. And after I did the show, he's like, "Hey, you were really funny." And I was like, "Check it out. I don't have a job right now. If you give me $50 a week, I'll come in and be the third person on your morning show. I'll be like, a banana, whatever the hell you want. I don't care. And then if it works out, you give me a job. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like pay for my gas back and forth, because it was like a 15 or 16 mile drive from Erie to get there, because the station was in Northeast. And then I ended up getting a job there. But I really never thought I was going to stay in radio. Like, I still thought I was going to be a musician.
Oh, no, you were definitely going to. You negotiated your first deal.
That's crazy.
You negotiated your first job. Like, they don't teach you that in college. You don't negotiate. You don't negotiate your salary. You try to, like, manipulate the salary, but you don't negotiate.
Especially, like, accounting. Like, it's very black and white ledgers. Like, I mean, there's not much room. I mean, I guess once you're good at it, you can wiggle, the numbers or whatever.
It was just, I was the wrong person to do that job.
Yeah.
I didn't have the... I had no feel for it. I don't know why I went through. I definitely thought I was going to law school. And so I was like, I'll get an accounting background. And then like I got a job offer and I was like, whoa, I can make money right now. And it was September of my senior year at Penn State. And they're like, you have a job in Pittsburgh when you graduate. I'm like, that's all the pressure's off.
Yeah.
I made it.
I'm doing that, man. Yeah. So I went and, to like I said, I went into that, and then I was like, thank God I did that, because I'll never do it again. And then I ended up getting a call for the very show that sort of inspired me to do it in the first place 4 years later. And I just got really, really lucky.
Wow.
So that's how I got into it.
Well, you took the leap. You made your own luck, and that's what we support here. You got to take the leap. You got to really pursue what it is you want to do. You don't want to be stuck in not a dead end job, but just a job that's just a job, and then you don't have any outside anything that you could do that keeps you sane. You're just going to work and basically drinking on the weekends.
Desperation makes stuff happen, though. Now, it wasn't like I was in a position where it's like, I don't know where my next meal's coming from, because my family was there. So, my parents were divorced. So
back in.
Right. If I had to, I could move back in. There was 2 separate households, like my mom's and my dad's, so I could bounce around there and eat and stuff. So I had a pretty good cushion. But the idea of, I better do something otherwise because I'm an embarrassment right now.
Yeah.
That will make you take chances, which is why, like, guys often talk about doing what you do for a living and being comedians. The importance of not having a safety net is like, that's an integral part, I think, of moving forward as a comic. Someone was knocking on the door, but
I mean, I like with that whole safety net and the comedy thing, like it is tough to make that transition and let go of the safety net.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Ed still maintain like day jobs and the whole.
You have to have something. It's not like that's not a safety net to me. Like, just having a regular job is not what I mean by safety net, though. I'm talking about the people who think that I'll do like 3 shows a month. Or 2, or once in a while, or I'll dabble, and someone will see me, and they'll notice my, raw talent, and they'll spend a lot of time on making sure that this piece of coal is shined into a diamond, and it's like, that's not it.
That's not reality, and that's what a lot of, getting into this and working with artists and fucking artists, man. If you're listening right now and you're an artist, man, are you fucking sick? Like, work, man. Like, you go get out there and do some shit. Like, actually put the, fucking artists, you say, like, do shit on time, show up on time, motherfucking, put your shit out, promote your shit, like do work outside. Because a very small portion of what we do is here, like in the studio or on stage. Like, the shit that everybody else sees is a very small portion. The rest of the week, we're doing work to put, into that or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And juggling, like right now, we're juggling, the day job and that or whatever. It's a lot of work. And with the artists, a lot of work, artists that I've worked with, like you said, they feel like as long as I'm good, then people will finally find me. And it's
it's not how it works.
Yeah, you could be the best comedian on the planet, but if you're just doing shows in your mom's basement, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, nobody can see that.
I always say you got to be good enough to get a lottery ticket in whatever you're doing, And there are people who don't think that they think they have the lottery ticket just because they've entered into the form of whatever, comedy, music, whatever. They think that that's their ticket, and it's not. You got to be good enough to get the ticket. And then it doesn't matter if you're good enough. So much plays into it. Like, timing is the biggest thing. And I mean, most of it is just actually applying yourself nonstop and, really trying to put that first above and beyond everything. And even then, it doesn't happen. I met so many comics through the years who I'm like, that dude is a genius and nobody knows who they are. And it's, for one reason or another, obviously I wouldn't say names, but there's guys who, like, I think they're brilliant, and I listen to them still, and I think they're, like, at that level, like, why aren't they big? And there's musicians in Pittsburgh, that, like, several who I've talked about on the air a lot, where I don't understand why they're not huge, because they have what it takes, you know what I mean? And they have all of the elements, but there are other factors.
Yeah.
And I think that the best way in order to succeed is to first realize all of those obstacles and then kind of embrace it. Like, all right, this might not work out. So you don't get bitter when something doesn't go your way, or you realize that, something you think's a big break that doesn't break doesn't necessarily mean that's the end.
And that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You always get like, as a comedian, you get that first weekend at the Improv with somebody that you respect. You're like, oh yeah, I'm taking off.
It's on from now.
And
like
then that Sunday they give you your check and you just leave, and nobody reaches out or anything. You're like, Is this the end?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been so many, like, this is the show. Like, oh, my God, like, I'm on this. Somebody give me a call. I'm like, oh, I made it. Yeah, be like, this is cool. And then nothing happens after that.
Well, did you guys ever have, like, an opening slot for, like, a guy you revered, and then he was cool with you or she was cool with you, and you were like, oh, man, this means, this is, I mean, I'm going to get a call about this for sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a natural thing to think.
Yeah.
But if you don't get a call, that doesn't mean you don't have the goods.
Yeah, I mean, you realize too that he does this every weekend.
Yeah.
So
I'm the 80th comedian that's opened up for him in the 3 months in. Like, I mean,
but one of those obstacles as an artist or as you're trying to get into the game is a lot of times you don't have that local support, or you don't have that groundswell of support locally. But with DVE, you guys, even though you get national recognition, you guys are really supportive of local comedians and local artists. How important do you think that is? Or is that something that you took? I mean, I guess with you, they took a chance on you.
Yeah, for sure.
And so is that something that you decided, you know what, I'm going to make sure that I continue that? Or?
Well, I would say, so a couple things. Number one, like, as far as musicians are concerned, like, that show has always had local music on Fridays at a time when a lot of radio stations didn't. So they would have live bands from Pittsburgh.
Man,
like, I'm talking,
I was going there
25 years ago and stuff. Before that really started to happen regularly, they supported a lot of musicians. There was a period of time when I started there in 2000, and I would say for the first 9 years or 10 years, there was not a concerted effort to go above and beyond the sort of, just from a musician standpoint, the bands that had been recognized already, or the comics that had been recognized. There was like 3 guys.
Yeah.
There was like 3 bands. So they would still have bands live on Friday, but they'd never feature comics or anything like that because, quite frankly, there weren't a lot of them. And they weren't doing a lot of, the ones that were out there weren't doing anything that was like separating themselves like from the pack in a way that you felt like, okay, this is a special voice. And that really, and I that sounds shitty, but like, I don't mean it to sound like that. Like, they were good comics. There were. But the need to like bring them on, I don't know. It felt a lot different when Bill came on the show, because before Jimmy Crenn was there, and he was like the liaison to the comics. And so he knew all the old guard. So if, like, when Billy Elmer had a gig, he'd come in and talk, and, like a guy like Augie Cook or something like that, cats who've been around already and sort of established. And then, like, Jimmy started to get out and about a little bit and discovered, like, Bill and Mike Wysocki and stuff like that. And I think that kind of helped us rediscover that there were actually a bunch of young voices that were doing something new on the comedy front. And so when Bill ended up getting the job, it was only natural that we wanted to do that because the talent was there. I mean, like, if you guys stunk, I wouldn't want you on the show. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be like, well, they're local. You know what I mean? And I never want anybody to think if they get, if we invite them on, it's just because they're whatever. I think there are brilliant comics in town. Like, I think Alex Sapula is a really, really funny dude.
He's a gem.
With a special approach to comedy that makes him totally unique and distinguishes him from everybody else. I think that John Dick Winters is working really hard and doing funny stuff as well. Jeff Conkle could be writing for SNL. And his performing chops are really solid. Sean Collier's come a million miles and is really, really good on stage doing something. Like, when you host as much as he does and do set, like, that's a separate muscle. You guys know. You hate getting that call. Like, that's a tough thing. He's doing things that I think are really good, like the next level. And I think there's a lot more people like that than there used to be. And from a music standpoint, there certainly is. And it only made sense that we're like, well, if we're the Pittsburgh station and we're the station that everybody sort of associates with Pittsburgh, why don't we look inward to the people? Like, let's celebrate what's going on here as much as possible. And to our boss's credit, they don't get involved in anything. They don't bother us about anything. Really? It's just whatever like me or Bill want to do, we do it. So, when you guys have something to pimp, we're like, come on, let's talk about it.
The process is, I mean, Slack or Bill just be like, hey, you guys want to, and then we just show up or whatever. Like it's
date and you're in there.
Yeah, it's not like it's like let's we got to sign these contracts, you got to do the whole thing, and then maybe it's just like, hey, come in and
Yeah, they built a new studio too, and one of the emphasis of that new studio, and I specifically remember talking with Crawford about this, was he was like, this is great because now we're going to have a room big enough that we can have guys just sit in. And there are guys like Andy Picaro is another guy who can come in and sit down and just be able to riff and keep the ball in the air and be really good at it. And maybe we can start to develop some local voices so that there's continuing variety of voices and viewpoints on the show so that, stops it from getting stale. So in that sense, it's a little sort of self-serving on our part. We're like, hey, if other people can come paint the fence,
you're on several days. What is it, Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday.
Yeah. You're on Monday through Friday early in the morning. You don't know. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's okay to have somebody else carry the rock now and again.
We do this, 4 to maybe 6 in a busy month, maybe 10 times a month. You're doing 5 and then you do, and we're 5 days a week, and we're only on like again an hour to an hour and a half. Like you guys are doing hours in the studio 5 days a week. I couldn't imagine at that level.
Hey, listen, even Jordan passed the curve. That's all I'm saying.
And every podcast we have a guest on to help with that. To like you said, keep the ball up and keep the conversation interesting.
And that's really what it is, because there are I think some people think that when you come on as a guest that the onus is on you to hit home runs and everything's got to have this huge punch, or that you have to always immediately be working towards that. And so much of it, as you guys know from doing this podcast, is just actually keeping the conversation and the ball in the air. And you'll get there. You'll get to all those points, which I'm sure are the same tenets as improv. I never really studied improv or anything, but I'm sure that the yes and philosophy is sort of being utilized there, But if you're a funny guy and you have the ability and the wherewithal to just do that, then you'll get to that really funny part. Every time you guys are on, I'm never in a hurry to have you guys spike the ball. You know what I mean? We'll get there because I know you're funny, and I'd rather have the conversation, because the tension, not tension, but the sort of buildup of a conversation allows for the floodgates to open on a ton of punchlines.
Yeah,
right.
Well, that's the same thing on stage or whatever. When I look at Dave Chappelle,
what do you think of his specials?
I hadn't seen his special yet, so it was controversial. I still haven't gotten to him.
Did you see that?
People are just being sensitive. It's I don't know. Maybe I view comedy differently, but it's comedy. He's not gonna. It's not for him to be safe. It's for him to.
I saw a couple
look inward and stuff like that.
I saw comments from comics from around, some good, some bad. I saw
controversial.
I saw a screenshot of something, and so I was just like, that just is bullshit.
People are haters. People hate that he's doing it on that level.
Yeah, well, shit.
He got 60 million.
Shit.
If I put it like this, if they didn't put out the price for what they paid him,
there probably
there wouldn't be as much backlash. Because this shit wasn't that. It wasn't that
I'm sure there are more. There are more I guess controversial or offensive comics that have some sort of special out there that don't get nearly the same coverage and attention,
right?
With what he's done. And again, I haven't seen the special yet, but just knowing Dave Chappelle, knowing his routine or whatever, it's not like he's coming out. I can't imagine him coming out and just being like, you know what, now all of a sudden I'm going to be the Andrew Dice Clay of comedy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to come out here and just punching people in the face or whatever. But because of his status, then I could see why there's more hate brought on.
It's an interesting thing because he had such that iconic status, and a lot of people thought he just pissed it away. And like most of you guys, he's a pretty emotionally complex guy. The only issue, I don't have any issue with it, the Cosby jokes or any of that stuff. A comedian's decision on any of that stuff is a lot of people thought the Louis C.K. monologue he did before SNL about child molesters, they're like, that was so brilliant the way he did it. And I personally, I love Louis. I didn't see it that way. I thought I thought it was actually cheap and he has the skills to pull that off. And I think he's a genius, but that particular thing, everybody was just celebrating his genius. I'm like, I don't know. What's the real payoff on that premise and joke?
Yeah.
You know, so I don't always think that everybody I love does something great.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think Chappelle's great. And if I don't love it, it doesn't bother me. The only thing that bothered me was the way he's addressing the Key and Peele thing, because it's really narrow-minded. Because he's trying to take ownership for something that existed before he did his show. Like stuff that has inspired him.
Yeah, I guess I'm with you on that. I don't really understand what he's trying to get out of saying, oh, I was hurt by the fact that they did it and they said created by Key and Peele. It's like, I mean, they're talking about this episode. They're not talking about the format. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it didn't bother me as much because I was like, whatever. You know, sometimes I'm just like, whatever with what people say.
I would argue that Key and Peele became much more diverse. It wasn't just racial humor. As it continued on, you saw the seeds of what Jordan Peele was going to end up doing with Get Out, for sure. But like, because he loved the horror genre, they did so many movie spoofs that weren't race related. And like, they did some brilliant stuff, and Chappelle did that as well. But it wasn't as if they only relied on like one avenue of inspiration for the comedy.
Well, when with the Key and Peele, like when I looked at Comedy Central in general, like after Chappelle had left, they brought in Carlos Mencia or whatever.
Right.
And I felt like Carlos Mencia was trying to like kind of fill in that whole like racial gap of like, and I didn't like that at all. I just, and then Key and Peele.
It was like a forced.
It was very forced, and
he's kind of he is what he is.
Yeah. So there was that, and then Key and Peele came on, and again, I haven't seen the special. I don't know what his comments to it were.
He essentially said that it hurt his feelings. They ripped off his show. He said he was tired of seeing Key and Peele do his show.
Well, and honestly, when I don't watch a lot of Comedy Central, and I don't watch a lot of stand up now, just because. I don't want to, while I'm on stage, take other people, this and that or whatever.
Right. That's why I don't follow some people on Twitter, because I'm like, I like them, but I never want to have the same tweet as them. Like, mostly locally, because I don't want to.
Yeah,
feel like,
because and that's the thing that happens in comedy. Sometimes you'll hear a joke, or sometimes where in life you'll forget about it, and then it'll come back and you'll think it's an original idea or whatever.
Right.
Just to avoid that, I try to avoid. But like watching the Key and Peele or whatever, I did think that at least that first season was very influenced by the Dave Chappelle show. I think that once it went forward, the subsequent
I don't think there's any like question that it was, but the point that we're raising here is whether or not he's allowed to be angry that he inspired another show. Formatically, they did come out on a stage to an audience, so it looked like it was stand-up, and introduce it, and it almost looked exactly like the Chappelle show.
Keenan and Kel was coming out on the fucking stage and acting. Right. You know what I mean? Like, listen, you left your show, you left a void, and people, like, networks, they're going to try to fill that void.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're going to, I don't know if Key and Peele formatted the show in that manner. Maybe the network formatted
I guarantee you the network had a lot to say about that initially. They wanted that to be a cop. There's no question.
Yeah, the first season, I was watching this, and I was like, you really just want to try to you want to be this Dave Chappelle. I do think that it did get better as it went on, and I think that they did find their voice. I think that it was just their way to get in. And then you do that. Some people do things to get in, and then once they're established, then they can go out. And again, like with Get Out and like the careers that Jordan and with Key and Peele have done and have fleshed out for themselves are wildly different from Dave Chappelle or whatever. I mean, but yeah, I can see that first one, but like now, I don't think that there's really much to say. Like, every episode is like my episode. Like, maybe the first season.
You can't begrudge P and Keel for that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not on them to be like, wait a minute, you want us to do this too much like the Chappelle show? We're gonna drop our shot at fame and notoriety out of mere principle.
Yeah, they've used it as a springboard, and that's fine. Like you quote unquote created the format, fine, but you're not. It's not going to stop with you. Like it's a wildly
in living color, format. The Richard Pryor show.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to talk about the
Saturday
black
Night
comedy,
Live.
I mean,
It's out there. You're above that, Chappelle.
But that raises a different point altogether, which is Like, how much do you hold the artists you revere to having some sort of emotional stability that you're okay with? Because
most artists
that's asking a lot.
Yeah, most artists are pretty emotional and sensitive and prone to mood swings. And I mean, if you've ever dated an entertainer, if you're listening, you know. I mean,
hey, date me. I'm stable. I'm so fucking stable. I'm so stable. They were concerned about my blood pressure when I was in the hospital. They're like, what the fuck? This nigga feel? Shit.
And it is tough. I mean, because you see, and there's a lot of joke stealing and like a lot. And that's the thing is that like I was reading an article that a comedian posted or whatever about just stand up comedy and how jokes arrive or whatever. And you have. There's one thing to take a joke and kind of a premise. There's no original premise on the planet. No. I mean, everything is
not unless it's something that happened directly to you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, I mean, storytelling is one of the few things that you can, and that's why for me, I revere that as like the ultimate level of comedy because, it's a personal thing, and to relate something so personal to a large audience is a very difficult task.
Yeah.
So storytelling is very difficult, but set up punchline, comedy or whatever. No premise is original. So, when you have that, you have some jokes that are like very, like, I mean, it's just straight theft. Like, I heard your joke. I liked it. I might have changed a word or a name and then boom, now it's mine. There's that. Then there's those jokes that, like, again, we were talking about how, like, you just forgot that you may have heard it and then you retell
when you're
it.
ad-libbing, I guarantee you, how many times you've been on the podcast and you get done with it and you're like, man, that one run I went on, was that? And then it wasn't like you pinched it on purpose, but it might have been some sort of like something in the back of your head. I mean, I do that occasionally where I'm like, did I lift that from somebody or was that original thought?
I was on stage one time and this was maybe the first or second year in comedy or whatever. And I got to like, telling a joke and it was like I was doing like Ed Bailey mannerisms or whatever. Just kind of like,
wait a fucking minute.
Yeah.
Whoa there, bro.
The fuck out of him.
You never told me this.
Nope. Drinking Ed podcast. That's it. Fuck the partners.
We've been sitting here across from each other for 2 years. This never came up.
I was like, I'm on the stage, and because you have your, I have my jokes or whatever, and then you get to.
I said I was Ed Bailey. It was weird.
It was all some riffing types, and then like I was like, just a little bit of it was like, wait, and I'm in mid, and I'm like. Wait, that the way I was like that was too Ed Bailey-ish.
But don't you think that people do that to a certain degree?
Yeah, I mean you do. I mean people take on various things. It's different.
But like, you recognize it right away. I was
recognizing it right away or whatever. And then it's a dude that like I'm like this is my peer. This isn't like Chris Rock or Richard Pryor or like George Carlin, like the greats where you're like it's okay to be influenced. Like I feel like as a young artist you feel okay to be influenced by those. But when you're like, working with your peers or whatever, it was just like, oh shit. So then at that point, I'm like, all right.
He seriously never told you about that?
He never told me about this.
No, definitely.
Day and I will never do shows again together.
He's just make him stand in the back of the room, lock him in the bathroom.
Yeah, we now have a new rule on Partners Pod. Day and I can't do stand up in the same room, so book us separate. We get booked a lot together. Book us separate.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, we don't get booked a lot. We only get booked a lot together when we're.
I guess when we're doing the thing.
Yeah, because the Negroes.
Initially, we were.
Initially, it was, and then they had to split up the Negroes. It was like we can only. There's only a couple of y'all.
Guys, we reached our quota about 3 weeks ago.
That ain't the first time white people were splitting up Negroes.
Because it got to the point where we were doing all the shows together, and then it got to a point where we were only doing shows together in February, and that was a real thing that happened. I was like, man, I ain't seen you since February, actually, last year.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's become a lot more progressive than it used to be.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's
like I think that there are more. Definitely, there are more rooms for a lot of different voices in comedy, and people actually, I think, in Pittsburgh now embrace the idea of diversity in a way that they hadn't before. I mean, in the confines of the city, it has always been a fairly multicultural thing. I'm not talking like from an entertainment standpoint. I mean, just demographics. I can't imagine you guys are going out and doing a lot of shows in
Finleyville.
Honestly,
like 25, 30 miles away. There's just not a lot of comedy going on out there. I'm guessing, right?
well, I mean,
VFWs.
yeah, that's the thing is that, I mean, most crowds that we
but
perform in
potentially
front of,
those audiences aren't as diverse as the ones you'd get.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you didn't hear
the
my
city
story
shows are more diverse, but I mean, honestly, I want to say maybe 80% of the things that we do, especially being, having a drinking podcast, a craft beer podcast, and being in Western Pennsylvania or whatever, a lot of the shows that we do, I would say like 80, at least for me, like at least 80% of it are majority white shows. I mean, and we do Contra,
you guys just go out and be like, we're black guys for Trump. It's all cool.
No, you can't. Listen, I go home to a young lady that's not allowable.
Yeah.
You can't be a black guy for Trump in my house.
And that's like, when we do the Contra show, where we have a monthly show, and that's in Cranberry, right? I mean, that is a very, vanilla, area or whatever, right? And a lot of you do our VFWs,
That's
your
like a killer
Finleyvilles,
stage. I've not been there, but I've seen pictures. That place is awesome.
It's one of my favorite venues. If
So
not mine.
that whole they voted Trump out there. That's all a completely.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, and
they
red
won't tell
area.
us, but they won't tell
But
us.
does that confront you all as a comic going up there? Because I know that your political ideology is 180 of that.
Well, my thing is, look, I'm getting paid to go up here and make people laugh. I'm not getting paid to go up and make anyone specific laugh or a specific demographic. I'm going to go out there and perform, and it doesn't matter who I'm performing in front of because I'm going to make you laugh. Like, that's how I approach it. So, we do Contra, and those people, they have very, very different backgrounds from myself, and that's fine. I think if I can go out there and work that stage, then I'm really working on something. Like, my jokes are really working. Like, if I only have to perform with people who are just like me, then I don't know how much of a career I'm going to have.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's the thing that I enjoy about what we do is that we're still very much like black in white. Audience. Whatever. Every time I get on stage for the white folks, I go, "Hey, white folks, like, I'm black. I'm the only motherfucker. Like, me and Ed are maybe the only two in the building. Let's talk about that for a little while." You know what I mean? Like, and I make my views known on the whole nine, and people still gravitate towards that. I mean, because it's one of those things that you don't want to feel like a sellout in that situation where, like, I'm gonna go up here and I'm just gonna completely forget who I am and what I am just to make a dollar. The beauty of it is that we can get up there and say, like, I go and I make a point to say, hey, because it's an elephant in the room type thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was kidding about that. You have to be who you are. But we've seen video after video of comics who are trying to make a Trump joke, and it's like we're in this place right now where there is no middle. If there is, it's small. And people feel like they have a voice like never before. And so they feel like they can use it everywhere.
Yeah.
In the supermarket, in a comedy show. I mean, we've seen so many YouTube videos of people getting heckled by people just for telling a joke. And I would think that if I was a guy getting up on stage to tell jokes, Trump was a target, that if you were going on like a 5-minute run of Trump stuff, that you might be like, oh, I hope I get through this.
Yeah, I mean,
but you guys are braver than I.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, like, I think if you do it well, and that's the thing I loved about Chris Rock, is that, like, he and Richard Pryor and Eddie, like, they were able to say, like, offensive type things or whatever, but say it in a funny manner. When you're able to kind of, so you use that, say, if you're good at what you do, you can say something that somebody doesn't agree with, and kind of like use comedy to bring them on and say, hey, listen, because you're not going to get this opinion anywhere else. You're not going to get, like, even today, you're not going to get it from social networks because it's probably at an echo chamber. You're not going to get it at the grocery store. You're not going to get it at your family's house. You're coming to this comedy show. We want you to enjoy this comedy show. You know what I mean? Like, so, first and foremost, we want you to enjoy that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, this is the thing that's going on. So let me just lightly touch on that. Hey, I'm not gonna badger you for 10 minutes about Trump and how you guys should feel this, that, and the other. But at the same time, I am gonna let you know this is how I feel about it, right? Quickly say, hey, this is how I feel about it. Get in and out so that you know where I'm at. And then at the end of the show, when you come up to me, you understand where I'm at, how I feel about that. You also understand everything that's going on here, and you see a parallel, how, like, you were able to enjoy this night with a guy that has a completely different view from where you came from, and now maybe you see that I'm not as different as maybe you thought I was.
Like I think
Mm. 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 Yeah.
it's about anything on the internet these days. But it
Mm.
seems
Mm.
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there are very few people that you can watch do a set and be like, maybe he has a point if you don't agree with that point. I think your point should, if you're doing comedy, most people, your point is going to be funny. And I say that to say, if you're doing a Trump joke, it can't just be a stock fuck Trump joke. Like it has to be, you have to point out something specific that you found funny. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something where you're questioning or raising like, oh, I don't fuck with Trump and shit like that. It's just, these are things that are happening.
Yeah.
And you might be performing in front of people who really are for Trump. And it is a very polarizing situation at some point. But you're a comedian and you're there to be funny. And if you don't have something like, if you don't have something to say, if you don't have something of value to add, then don't just be up there just trying to get cheap laughs because it's a popular subject.
Right.
Because people are going to call you out on that shit.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't have a lot of Trump jokes. I have a Trump joke that goes well, but it's not even a joke where you would look at my opinion and it's like, well, he's definitely fucked Trump. It's more of a play on how people feel about the situation.
Right.
And I don't necessarily align myself with either side within the joke. It's just something that I notice, and I know that the crowd notices it as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Calling out the absurdities.
Right, calling out the absurdities. I don't go on to make a political stance. That's not me as a comedian. There are certain comedians who do though. And you have to be really good at making that political stance and having something of value to add to where people can look at you and respect your opinion. They have to respect you on a different type of level for them to even be okay with that at a comedy show where they're trying to come see comedy.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be careful with shit like that.
Yeah.
And that's not to say be timid or be scared about things like that, but just really understand what you're saying. Like, I don't think a lot of comedians think about what they're saying. They're just so caught up in, I want to be funny, or I want to be this type of person.
Yeah.
I want to say this to people.
Yeah, but
And
you
it's
guys
like,
have an identity and an act, and like there's
takes a while to get that.
narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And so when you're off, like I know who you are, Day. I know who you are, Ed, when you're off stage, and that's just from seeing 10-minute sets. Like I get that, and I think a lot of people when they're first starting out are just trying to bounce from joke to joke to joke and figure out what's funny, and that's natural progression. And I like watching that as much as anything. Like that's what it's like watching minor league baseball. You're like, oh, that guy's gonna be good. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was a Loaded show that Crawford did recently where they brought some kid up and he was like 20, and you knew he had the tools. You know what I mean? Like he went up.
Oh, that was De Silva.
Yeah.
De
Lorenzo.
Silva. I love Lorenzo, man.
Yeah.
He just had him on. I've had him on a couple of shows in the last couple of months. He's amazing. He's one of my faves.
He's got it.
Yeah, he's got it.
But maybe
He's
you don't know
got it.
exactly who he is yet, but like you can tell like
Yeah.
he has the tools to do it. And maybe he's still pulling from the left and the right a little bit, you know, to like, you know, patch together an act, but you know, you guys get to that point where you're like, it's all jokes off of the same road that you're driving down, you know? So it's not like, I'm going to pull the wheel and take us down this road way off course of what we were just talking about.
You gotta be one big part of comedy to me is be yourself, man. Be your fucking self. Be you. on stage. Find what's funny about you, and that's the stage part of.
Well, like you said, I mean, it's finding your voice.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, and that's the hardest part because, like, when you get in, like you said, I mean, because I've had thoughts, like, I'll be driving in a car and I'm like, man, impressions are a thing, or like maybe some weird, like, absurd humor.
Your
type,
voice, you ain't doing no impressions.
Yeah, like just weird, just weird things. Like, oh, maybe I could take it left and just do something completely different. But then I'm thinking,
Prop
like,
comedy.
Yeah, like it's like there's so many different aspects of like you see so many different types of comedy, and you're like, man, I really enjoy that. Like maybe I could do something like that. And then I'm like, but that's not me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and that really is a thing that has just recently kind of come about because when I first got into it, I was open to just about anything. You know what I mean? Like,
I think you can be open to anything, but whatever you're open to, it has to be a reflection of you in it.
Yeah.
Like you. So if you do
Yeah.
prop comedy, what would Dave Bracey do with a prop? Don't just do, oh, I've seen this type of prop comedy, let me try that. No, Dave Bracey with a prop. Put Bracey that shit
but see,
out.
Dave Bracey doesn't do prop like he. Yeah, I mean, like,
Well, you don't
nobody-
have
Right.
to do
That's,
prop.
what I'm saying.
No.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that people.
Well,
that are
prop
gonna-
is a bad I think example of that. I think like Bill Burr when he first started as compared to where Bill has been for the last 6 or 7 years, like his act outs became such a great asset and part of his act and the source of like a ton of comedy, and they got better and better and more extravagant. Extravagant's a stupid word, but more extended than they had been previous. But he never lost his voice.
Yeah.
Right.
It never became like, oh, he's doing something different now. Like nobody even noticed. When Bill was up there in the beginning, he was just, Pitbull.
Yeah.
And now he kind of has all those dimensions but it stayed within the same voice. I mean, that's like stand-up is such a great art form, and it's so fun to watch. I have such great respect for it. And I very much have sat on the bench and enjoyed watching everybody on the field, and always had too much respect to try it. I like went out and did a bunch of guitar stuff for Kren back in the day when I first started, just to put together like 10 minutes before he went on, and I would play like 3 parody songs and weave some stuff in between it. And I never considered myself like able to do that.
Well,
I think because I think it's such. I have too much respect for it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly get because I can't string 3 notes together on the guitar. It's just one of the hardest things.
I'm not attempting anything
but-
musically.
Well, plus I'm not a huge fan. I think there are like guitar comedy, like that, like all that kind of stuff. I don't like. I think there's only a couple of guys who do it good, and it's like if you're a used car salesman, it's kind of like being a morning radio DJ in a way. It's like if you tell somebody that's what you do, you're automatically reduced to the lowest common denominator,
Yeah,
and nobody's ever like he does guitar comedy, and they're talking about Stephen Lynch, like, or like Tom Lehrer back in the day doing these unbelievable piano composition, satirical songs and stuff. That's kind of a lost art
they
form.
always
So I
throw
think
you in
that
there.
part of it, I was like, this seems hacky.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I appreciate arts that I can't do. Hands down, like I said, I can't play any type of instrument. So that for me is like one of the things I just sit on the sideline and I get to like interview so many different musicians and I get to meet these folks and like
There's a lot in
the fun
Pittsburgh
of
right
it.
now,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, one of the things that again you were touching on was just like progression and with the show, and the whole because. What we have been finding, and I guess I'm just kind of picking your brain at this point, because when we first got into it, it's like it's a comedy show, it's a comedy podcast. So like we gotta always be funny. We always gotta, have the punchline. We always gotta, and now, since we've been getting into it, we're 2 years in or whatever. Now it's like we realize there's some shows that are they get serious and we don't really there are very few jokes in. But the beauty of it is when we do hit the jokes, they are rolling. And going back to the Dave Chappelle thing is like I'm watching him on stage and he's telling a story or and he has his build up and he's not telling any like real jokes for like 8 minutes. He's just talking.
Yeah.
And then once he gets to the punchline, then it's a rolling punchline. Now you got punchlines for another like 3 minutes, just
Right.
hit. And it's beauty. and with what you guys are doing, what you're saying, like, keeping a conversation alive, like, yeah, you can keep it going and it doesn't have to be, like instinct, like just, punchline. But once you get there, it should
be arrived at pretty naturally, I mean, I think that the audience knows when you try too hard.
Yeah.
And like just like on a podcast, like if someone grabs the wheel and yanks it, the audience knows that it doesn't feel right, you know? So I think if you arrive at it naturally, and that doesn't mean that you don't have to be clever enough to reach that conclusion, but like you help each other sort of strive to get there. I mean, I think that one of the big differences in my industry and like the people I've talked to, there's just not a lot of shows. We're very lucky in Pittsburgh to be able to do this, what we get to do on DVE Morning Show, because it has for so long been a medium where they have only constricted the ability of the people on air. And it's been the exact opposite for me. And, you know, that's part of why I wanted to stay in Pittsburgh was I love Pittsburgh, number one. Number two, the freedom that show is offered. Like I was saying, they don't bother us. You know, we're fortunate that the ratings are really big. But the one thing is they rely on us to do the right thing, to have the right ideas. And the one thing that I think that has changed pretty drastically in the last 5 years is the way that people consume entertainment. And we are in this mindset now where we want bulk. We want to binge. We want to binge watch Netflix. Yeah. We want to listen to hour-long podcasts of one conversation. And I think that by embracing that mentality a little bit on air, which is a tough thing to do for drive time, to be like, we're going to stack one big thing here on top of, you know, all of the other elements we have to get to. I think that we've kind of been able to do that a little bit, and it takes people along for a ride, even if it's only a 15-minute run of one topic or whatever. Like, a lot of times we end up doing those for about 18 minutes, which is an eternity on morning radio. You know, I remember getting hired and one time them being very upset about something that I did that ended up, it was an interview that went 10 minutes. And like, I mean, how do you talk to somebody for less than 10 minutes? You know, like if it's worth a shit anyways, you know, like you want to keep talking to them, but people will listen. And if you stay engaged in what you're dealing with, it doesn't matter that you're not being it's not being the funniest thing in the world. Like, passion goes a long way. You guys like what you're talking about, then the listener likes hearing you. And if they're not already on board with what you're talking about, maybe they'll get into it. Or maybe they think you're dicks. I don't know. But like, more than likely, I think that they stay engaged with you because most people don't have the luxury of being like, you know, turned on to a bunch of different stuff. And when you're a comic, you get to, like, maybe in your day job, you have a little more free time than the guy who's on the telephone pole. Or, you know, doing what I do, I get to, like, binge watch all this stuff or see a movie or listen to albums and talk about it. And that's not going to end up at a, like, hilarious punchline or anything. But I'm like, this is great, and you should check it out, and here's why. And that's enough for a lot of people to just kind of like be like, oh, okay. Like, they like hearing that too. Yeah. So there's like a variety of different ways to keep people engaged and entertained, and it didn't used to be like that. So, like, people would bail on your ass. They'd be like, there's not 18 jokes and a bunch of sketches. Then I want out of here. Particularly like, oh, there hasn't been one goofy character. I'm turning the channel, you know.
That is a good point. You don't hear as many of these characters on the radio anymore. Like, people have kind of gotten into, and for me, like, I listen to some podcasts, and I listen to more sports podcasts than anything. And yeah, they're talking about sports, but it's just kind of cool to listen to someone else's opinion on something that I have an opinion on and listen to them bounce off of each other. Then I don't have the pressure of trying to prove my point. Let's see what these people think. Oh, he has a similar point about, oh, this is how someone reacts to that. Yeah. And and if those two people are engaged in that conversation, it does draw you in. Like, if two people are genuinely engaged and there's that good synergy, like you and Bill, you know, you guys have a good energy and synergy about you.
Yeah. Well, he's awesome.
Well, Bill Crawford, that's our guy. Yeah. And so it's an easy listen. Yeah. It doesn't take much to listen, and with your time slot, I mean, generally if people are listening, they're on their way to work or something like that, and you kind of it's calming to a certain degree. Even if it's like super funny, it's calming as well. Like it's like people love conversations. Everybody loves good conversation. Just everybody don't love to talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just want to just hear a good conversation. Like I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to have to think this shit through.
Yeah.
Like I just here, you say everything for me. Like, and you'll be sitting there and you'll identify with one person. Like, well, I'm on Randy's side of things this morning, so I'm talking to Bill.
Yeah.
And then the other morning, you're like, I'm on Bill's side of things, and I'm talking to Randy.
You want to find an advocate. You know what I mean? Somebody that you connect with and be like, all right, get in there.
Get in there.
Go fight go get my point across.
But it's a different muscle than doing stand up, and that's something that I think he's always been a brilliant stand up, and he had the ability to develop that skill, and he's just become really, really masterful at it. And it's an important and a really tough thing, because at the same time, like we were talking about, like, you know, the analogy of keeping the ball in the air. I mean, you're always doing that, and you all at the same time have to be thinking like, where am I going to get to the funny part?
Yeah,
you know, without like kind of rushing it or pushing it. And he's really good at that. But you know, you guys are great when you come on air too. It's, as you know, it's a different skill. There's another thing is like these great comics, people who are fucking killers on stage, come on the show and tank. Not like, there are people who come in and they don't want to be there. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
The people who come on and you're like, God, you're such a good stand-up. How are you not good at this?
So what is that like when that happens? Like, what do you sit like? Do you feel more pressure? Do you have to shoot more? Like
a little bit.
Like,
you start to realize after a little bit that you have to take the ball a little bit more, but you're still not looking to outshine anybody. You kind of always want to make sure that you're putting them in the best light. And sometimes that I have to take like a bullet sometimes. Like I was joking about this, like, all right, what I'm going to have to do here may sound a little corny, or it might seem a bit like I hope not disingenuous, but I may seem too eager to make this guy good. But I'd rather have that momentary air, like where I'm like, oh, so you know when Day comes on, he's never funny yet. So I'm like, I'll be like, oh, so no, you got the thing. Like, I'm on your team. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, come on, dude. Right? I mean, am I, like, and it might seem like I'm a little overeager.
Yeah.
But, and I know that can sound really douchey, but like, it's at the risk of, you know, I want to help that guy be funny or that girl be funny. And I don't care if it makes me kind of look dumb for a second, but I won't do that the whole time. I won't be like, oh, okay, I'm a jackass.
You got to be a motivator, and that's one of the few that's one of the things that you don't fully understand about this type of shit. That, you know, I mean, because like you said, I mean, from comedy to this, it was a completely different thing. I was like, man, I'm funny, and he was like, he's funny.
Yeah, everyone thinks they can do a podcast.
It's just like, let's just do
There's
this.
a reason you guys got best podcast in the city.
We did it, and like when we first, honestly, like when we first did it, it was weird because we didn't know what the fuck. And we got to talking, and then we just sat there and looked at each other like, so what's the next thing we're going to say?
Because you're only thinking about being funny.
Yeah.
You don't think about the conversation.
It was, I mean, I tell people, like, when they come, they get introduced to podcasts, like, don't start at number 1 and 2. Like, those are fucking terrible, right? You know what I mean? Like,
like everybody's first album. It's like every time a band comes on, you know, they'll be like, okay, what are you going to play? And they're like, this is a song we wrote last night. And you're like, why don't you play something on your album so people can listen to it? They're like, oh, fuck that, man. We were no good then. Last night was our pinnacle. Here it is. And you're like, dude, I can't sell last night. It's not a product yet, you know?
So, I mean, just with your progression, like, you know, getting it, because you went from accounting.
Yeah.
And then you were in music, and then you did you were like, just get me on, you know. And then,
basically.
you know, like you started out, and now you are, you know, like the head of this behemoth that you have. Like, when did you start to feel like you found your voice? What were some of your influences and whatnot like?
Well, I was influenced by Paulson and Kren and the radio show that they did, and I was honored to get to work with both of them. They were really great, and they were pioneers here in Pittsburgh. And they did great things. Like, I think I took a little bit from both of those guys. I really do. But I had a lot of different influences, and it was through. It's like, dude, you know how it is. Like you take steps, and sometimes they're horrible ideas. And you learn from doing all the wrong things so many times. And I still do it, and hopefully I do less of the wrong thing than I used to, you know? So the one thing I've always kind of made sure that I did, not out of any obligation, really, but because I love comedies, I really try to stay up on all the like modern comedians on like sort of every level, at least a little bit, to have an idea of how people's voices are changing, because I think that is the best indicator of how people are viewing the world at any given moment.
I mean, you also, but even as a broadcaster and like having that, like, I mean, outside of the comedy world, you have like journalism and the whole field of people that like, you know what I mean? Like that do what we do is basically talk for money.
Right. Well, you know what it is? So like for my job, it's, I go shopping and like I always like use this analogy for Bill. Like we all buy like we have all these ingredients, and then you're like, all right, now we got to cook something, and then you have an idea of what it's gonna be, but there's some ancillary shit you might not use, and it gets thrown out. Well, sometimes all of it gets thrown out, and one thing gets like you have to over prepare constantly, and then like it always comes around. You'll be able to use something like down the road. But to not get caught up in the idea that, well, I said we're making spaghetti today, so that's what we're doing. Like sometimes you have to just switch because as something as simple as, well, the tenor of this conversation is dictating that we go somewhere else, and that's going to be a better broadcast. And then if you make decisions like that on the fly, and are not afraid to just like, oh, fuck it, we're not going to do that thing, you know, that I think it ends up being better and you're better for it. Even if you never go back to it and you prepared for it, throwing stuff away is not a bad idea. So I like balancing the dynamic of a room. Before, when I first started for many years, it would just be me and Jim in a room, just the two of us. And then I was like, I really think this benefits from more voices more often. And so Val started coming in to the room too, and she would just kind of be like a really light sort of buffer for Jimmy and I. Like she didn't really jump into a whole lot of the conversations. And then because that room was really small, I don't know if you guys remember that old room. It really sucked. There was not enough.
I don't think I was at the old room.
It was not
the art room.
It was it was really small. But introducing more voices and then learning how to sort of sit back and balance that. I think that the one thing that is important that you guys are probably learning too is that you develop this idea of what it sounds like to the audience.
Yep.
And so while you're doing it, you're like, oh, well, if I was listening to this right now, I would think this is dog shit. So I am not going to let this go on anymore.
That's the hardest part. Honestly, for me is the hardest part because I might be enthralled with a conversation that I'm having. And I'm like,
well, I guarantee you, everybody stop this podcast. There's nobody fucking listening to this.
No,
there's two dudes who want to start a podcast who are still listening and one radio geek.
People are still
Nobody
listening.
else gives a fuck.
People are still listening because Dave has not said anything offensive yet. So everybody's waiting for that point.
Well, and that's honestly, like, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, I have not cursed in this dude's presence yet. Like, because every time we're in the studio, we're in the, the sterile. I mean, like, so.
We got to hire you to come to all of our shows. This motherfucker, we did a show yesterday. We were at a park and one of the first 3 words he said was shit. I'm like, damn, you're not going to wait a minute? You're not going to warm up to the people? You just shit off top, huh? Like, it's some woman over there in like a dinner dress eating caviar. I'm like, this shit, you can't say shit here.
But like that's the thing that like I mean from being enthralled in the conversation or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, this is really good shit. But then you're like, but they don't give a fuck about like sneakers or whatever. You mean what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying before though about you kind of have to learn. You got to believe that if you're passionate about something that people are tuning into you because like Ed was saying about like the importance of being yourself on stage. Well, that's certainly so. The case, like on radio, is you kind of have to be yourself, and as much as possible. And if you are passionate about something, you have to kind of believe, well, yeah, people listen to this show and they know my viewpoints, and like they'll like this because if I like this, and then people are like, hey man, that sucked, that was awful. Nobody gives a shit. I'm turning the station, and then you're like, maybe I won't talk about that anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say,
you learn to like.
That's what I'm like. Where do you
where
get
the
yours?
Boundaries are?
Yeah, that's where do you learn how? Like, is it hate mail? Like, do you get hate mail?
Yeah, but not like I really don't let a lot of that affect me. It's really really hard. But like you can tell there's a difference between you suck or, you know, if somebody's pissed because I've railed on Trump. Because the tough thing is, like, you want to be sanctimonious because like I'm so outraged when I hear something about that. I'm like, motherfucker, what's golfing again? And then, you know, there's no joke there.
Yeah.
That's just me being mad.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's not really, I mean, everybody's mad. So that's when people will call and be like, I'm sick and tired. I'll never listen again. And we've had record ratings throughout the entire election. Like, literally the highest ratings the TV morning show's ever had throughout this entire thing. But we've never had this much hate mail.
Well,
never.
It was crazy because the first time we were on was the day after the election. Was it the day after? I think it was Tuesday. I think we were on
it was something like that. Yeah, it was like, very close.
The election was Tuesday, so we were either on like a Wednesday or a Thursday. It was like the day after, and like, you know, it was a crazy, and we didn't know how to, like, because I was like, you know, I don't know how to, like, I was at a point where it's like, I don't know how to react to white people anymore. Like, at this point, like, this is a different thing. So now I'm coming in, I was like, I don't know how this, like, and then I didn't know how, so it was a whole different thing. But, you know, like you said, I mean, you know, finding your voice or whatever, and what may be interesting to people as opposed to what's interesting to you or whatever. When you first start off, you know, you don't know that, right? I mean, and you've been doing this for a while. So when you get that hate mail, like when you're first starting off and you get hate mail or people get criticism or whatever, just even me as a comic, when I first started getting criticism, every criticism was like, holy fuck, like maybe I should,
they
you know.
They can say 100 compliments.
And that one
criticism,
you know, so when did you like start to kind of feel more confident in what you were doing and let some of that kind of flow
Well, you
off?
develop a callus. I mean, this goes back a little bit to what we were talking about like being okay with the emotional, you know, instability, for lack of a better way of saying it, you know, of artists, and accepting that in yourself, you know what I mean? So that you're like, okay, it's okay if that shook me for a second, but it can't shake me for good.
Right.
And you know, that was a long time ago. And now it all I kind of can tell when someone has a valid point or when they're really coming from their own filter of how they want things to be. You know, we started, you know, I made a conscious effort, particularly with Bill, because with Bill on the show, his strong point is doing sort of long form, like talk breaks. If I can get it, like he and I in a rapport about something, we're talking about one thing, I know that he's really good at that, and he can start like really landing some punches. Whereas with Jimmy, it was very like I would write a lot of punchy sketches for him. He did too, but I mean, like for us, I would write sketches, but I don't do that quite as much with Bill and I, because I mean, look, it takes a long time to write a 2-minute sketch.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, SNL buries a lot of shit every week, you know? So you're not always going to have gems when you do that. And to me, if I can have something that's running a lot longer, like 5 minutes, then I want to be able to like, pull that forward a little bit more than doing a brief sketch, and then you got to be out because there's no other transition at the end of a sketch other than WDVE, you know, or like a commercial break or a song, and then that risks not having people stay as long as I was talking about earlier. Like when you're extemporizing on something current, then people are going to stay with you the whole time.
Yeah,
I think, but you start to develop that sort of filter for that's a valid criticism, and that guy has a hair up his ass. People were real mad when like we first started, like, dude, you guys aren't playing enough music. Like we got that a lot.
People
the ratings kept
mad.
Going up and up and up, and they're like, you guys aren't playing enough music.
People are always mad. But so let me ask you this: how big is it with you all how big is it, and when do you feel that you identified each of your radio personalities within the construct of like you and Bill doing the show together? Because I feel like when you have a long form show and people are tuning in, and even with a podcast, because we're long form, you know, we're over an hour, what happens is Dave has a personality and I have a personality. So maybe Dave says something controversial, or I say something controversial. But if you're a fan of the show, it's not viewed as that's controversial, you shouldn't say that. It's an understanding of who this individual is, how they view
There's a
things.
background.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's sort of a background report. And maybe with the radio, maybe not everyone's like that because you don't necessarily subscribe to 102.5. You know, you listen, and there are a lot of people who listen, obviously, on a regular basis.
People listen that don't want to. You know, it's forced on them in their workspace or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at what point did you? Well, how big does your radio personality influence the opinions that you allow or that you present on the radio, and how important was it for you to define, okay, I'm more like this and Bill's more like this, so we can take a conversation in this direction, or we can go here with that, and then maybe I allow Bill to go on the long form kind of, you know, break with the punches and things like that?
Well, I think that, again, the most important thing is you really being yourself as much as possible without it, like, you know, there are times where I can't really phrase something the way I would if I was talking to you guys. And you try to do that in a way that doesn't make you a douchebag or sell out your point of view on something.
Yeah. And
I think what happens a lot of times is, you know, and Val is awesome at this too, because she knows me, you know, as good as anybody knows me, really, on the radio, that's for sure. And she'll call me out. Like, I know she's like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, she won't say it to me so much. She might look at me and be like, really? But that's an important thing, is that you kind of keep each other honest. And there are definitely bumps in the road all the time in regard to, like, managing your egos. I mean, I'm sure there's time when they want to strangle me. And there's, like, because they think I'm being inauthentic, and that's usually when it happens, where you're like, oh, fuck you, you know what I mean? And usually as soon as the mics are off, it'll get addressed now. I mean, the importance is if you have a good relationship off the mic and you kind of trust each other and understand each other and give each other room, that you'll help keep each other honest on the air, so that you don't enter into that bullshit territory. Because if I started to, like, just get all, like, you know, I definitely have a habit of, like, righteous indignation, you know, like, and another thing, you know, and you know, Bill will be like, oh, well, hold on, and just his tone alone will let me know, all right, my tone was already too much, you know. So I'll know that I'm probably getting a little too hyped.
Yeah, it's a lot more delicate with you guys. I mean, you know, you guys are on the radio. There could be a guy in the car with his family going to, like, I listen to you guys and I'm taking my kids to daycare.
Yeah.
You know, Day and I could just be like, yo, that's bullshit, man.
Yeah.
You lying, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I could just call Day. I don't know if I could do the radio.
Yeah, I don't think, like, I want to make it clear that, like, we don't really get there. Like, there's not a time where we're like, bullshit. Like, it is an occasional thing where I'll be like, really? Like, but no.
I mean, it's like you said. I mean, it's the subtle cues, it's the play back and forth.
You're your own governors, man.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of, like,
it's that chemistry or whatever. And that's the thing that, like, I didn't understand what people were talking about. Like with this episode, you know, with this podcast, whatever, people were like, your chemistry is really good. Like, the fuck is a chemistry?
Because we'd be like, yo, motherfucker, you lying.
Yeah, like, and they're like, oh, you guys, you know, work with it. I'm like, we're just drinking and talking to shit or whatever. But it's one of those things that, like, I'll look over and I'll see Ed's face and I'll know that maybe I'm going too far, or, you know, whatever. Yeah, this is boring.
Yeah,
we need
Ed's
to move
on his phone.
on.
You're like, all right.
Yeah, like we need, you know, and that's the thing that people.
Ed left. No, fuck. No, but seriously, that's how it goes, man, and that's how you sort of mold the dynamic between the two of you. You know, it takes a few, get the fuck over. You know, you call bullshit a little bit, not necessarily by actively doing it, but through
body language. And
right.
I mean, there's cues, there's ways to let know, like, we need to keep this thing moving.
Right,
like,
right.
You know.
Or he might give you a little shot, or you might give him a little shot, and you're like, all right, you're right.
Oh, man.
So what do you think, if you had to, if there was someone out here listening to this episode and they had an interest in getting into radio, outside of obviously being yourself, what would be the best advice that you could give them?
I mean, I hate that I have honestly told people many times don't. Because I
don't need as much competition out this motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly. No, the radio's terrible. You'll hate it. Stay away. No, I the reason I said don't is because it's changed so much, and I've got grandfathered into a good thing. And I really got in Indiana Jones style under the, you know what I mean? I mean, it's slammed
It's very
down
unconventional way that you
right after I got in this market, and it's totally different, and they just won't give it to you. So what I would say is, if you wanted to get into radio and do something along these lines, what you guys are doing, like this is what you have to do. You do a podcast, and you build the podcast, and at the same time, get a job working in radio. Do weekends, do whatever to start. And if you can get a regular gig, great. But while you're doing that regular gig, if you have constrictions, if you're, like 99.9% of the people out there whose program director is going to be breathing down your neck, telling you, keep that break to 7 seconds. And that's the shit they do. Where you're like, hey, that was Toad the Wet Sprocket, and coming up in just a little bit, we got another one from the Pretenders. And then you got to be out. Like, if you're doing that, which is that's how they make you start. They just don't give people shows. But the way that it might pop for you is if you're doing a podcast that gets more and more popular. I really think this is the future, and that this is how people are really consuming entertainment now. So I would say if you wanted to get into radio, do a podcast.
Word. And if you want to do a podcast and you want to hear how, don't do a podcast. Stop.
Yeah, don't. Well, we can't say that because
guys,
obviously,
listen, if you're out there, if you're listening right now,
Epicast.
these guys do a podcast. All right.
We do one.
You can do a podcast.
You to listen. If you want to do a podcast, contact Epicast.
Epicast Network.
But don't act
That's
like
how
if you come to the family meetings and gatherings and shit, we gonna just befriend y'all. We're not gonna do that.
Yeah, this is the Chappelle show, and you're Key and Peele.
Yeah, you competition. Don't let me take this improv headline to the next level. Then I'm gonna be on stage talking about, fuck that podcast. They took our style. They was wearing hats in the studio and shit like that.
I can't wait till Comedy Central hits us up, and then we can just do the Key and Peele, and then fucking Jordan Peele will be like, them motherfucking drinking partners. They stole our shit. Like, it's like, yeah, we did.
Well, Noriega has
he has a podcast.
Yeah, he has now his podcast started afterwards, but it's like drinking something.
They say
it's
drinking. Somebody told me that they were like, "Hey, yo, like, I mean, you got some competition."
Oh, I'm waiting till we get big enough to
he's got like a
Noriega notices us.
And I'm like, we ain't on the same level. There's levels to this shit.
He talk about drinking with Diddy. Like we.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey man, hold on a second. You guys drank with Rick Seaback. That's almost as good.
Yeah. All right, but he's the Diddy of Pittsburgh.
By the way, Rick Seaback should have a white party, don't you think? I mean, like Diddy does.
Yeah, he
not like
should.
a white party like you might find like 40 miles outside
like
of
the one
Pittsburgh.
With an auction,
right? With an auction, a silent auction, a Chinese auction. We're crying out loud.
Oh man, this has been amazing. We would love to have you on again. There's so much that we didn't even touch.
We'll do it better next time.
But
we were conversing.
We did a little inside baseball today.
Sometimes people listen to friends talk, and that's what was happening. We're talking, and people get a good understanding of the radio, because I think it's really admirable what you guys do. I mean, it's tough to get up and entertain people that you can't even look at. Like,
in a way though, it's easier.
I think you say that because you're doing that part, and then because I'm on stage, like I feed off of the crowd a lot. Yeah, and I just wouldn't as a stand-up comedian, if you tell a joke and don't get any feedback, that is the worst.
Yeah, that's why I admire those guys who's sitting there like a catcher, just holding it, right? Like there's just nothing, and they're just sitting there like letting that silence grow. And I think like radio, that can be pretty effective too. Silence on radio is actually pretty effective, and not a lot of people use it. And it's tough for me to utilize it with a bunch of people in the room. But silence, man, it's like the funnest tool to use. And when guys use it on stage, I think it's awesome. I mean, you can do so much.
It's one of those things that like you as a comic have to consciously develop the comfort of with silence, because it can add to a joke. It can be a powerful tool or whatever. But when you're first starting out, it means death. Especially when you're coming to open mics. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you only have 5 minutes. And if you're not making them laugh every 30 seconds, then you are like, that's the end of it. And like I said, it was one of those things, not that Dave Chappelle is the greatest comic ever. It was just one of those epiphany moments that I had watching him at the Oddball Festival in the point in my career where like I just saw him do he did a 12-minute bit, and for 8 of those minutes, there was no laughter. And me on stage, if I don't get some kind
you
of a
gotta
little
earn
chuckle,
that trust, though.
exactly. That's
You
an
gotta
earn.
earn
Yeah,
that trust.
and that's the
You
thing
also
that you
have
have
the
to build.
confidence to know that you're bringing a hammer down.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that being comfortable with the silence type thing. I mean, like if there's a minute that goes by, I'm like, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think this was a great cast. We learned a lot. We want to bring you on, and then we got to get into the stories because you have so many people.
Yeah, maybe another time. Well, yeah, there's lots of fun stuff from through the years, but I admire what you guys are doing for sure, and I wish you continued success. And to me, this is part of what's great about Pittsburgh now is, and it's I'm here to tell you, man, it's a lot different than it was when I moved. I moved here at the end of '99. And I've been doing the show for 17 years. And this town is totally different. And it was always cool. Always. But now it has a life like it didn't used to have. And that's a heartbeat that's like, it's so important to a city to remain vital, to have things like this podcast and a community that you're helping to develop and foster with this podcast and introducing people to comics and people in town they might not have had access to. I mean, that's the stuff like we get to like be in this unique, cool position to like help keep the place we live in cool.
Yeah.
Like we get to like,
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's such an like it's
Damn it, that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
you know, like
to cultivate.
I feel cool.
To cultivate the scene is because
Right.
10 years ago, a lot of like 10 years ago, a lot of things that weren't possible. This wasn't possible 10 years ago. I mean, it just wasn't, and I've been a native, like I'm born and raised Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I left for a few years, traveled, and then I came back and I was like, are we still here? It was such a weird thing to like travel, see the world, and then come back and be like, wait, this is where you guys are at? Like this issue. And I was on my way out. And then I got into the art scene, and the art scene is really one of those, like, Pittsburgh was one of those places that, like, you couldn't have fun unless you knew somebody.
No, I'm
you weren't just about to just come
different.
in, get a hotel downtown, and then live it up. Like
everything used to be about that was cool had, like, sports involved. And, look, I love all of them. Like, I love Penguins, the Steelers, Pirates. Like, that stuff, I got to do the coolest shit there. But that is like it's not enough for most people. It's great, and we're privileged to have an awesome sports town. Yeah. But if you don't cultivate the arts, well, it feels like there's like there'll be a pit there that only gets wider, and you can't let stuff like that. Like I feel like Detroit or a town like that, like they're just starting to come back around maybe a little bit. And maybe that's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying about the importance of the foundation of having an art scene, for lack of a better way of saying, like comedy, music, cool shit that people are doing, helping like everybody come up with better ideas on how to make this a vibrant city. And that's like happening, like everyone's kind of high-fiving, and sometimes we're up our own ass a little bit, but that's going to happen along the way. You know, because even now we do shit in this town, I'm like, really? All right, that's a little annoying. But that's so much better than what it used to be. If we're erring on the side of being a little obnoxious with how much we love ourselves, who gives a shit?
Well, no, not Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not obnoxious about how much they love themselves and how much they've influenced everything everywhere, and how you could be talking about all this is I could get better hamburgers here, but you ain't got 6 rings, damn it. No, that's not Pittsburgh, is it?
I mean, but like you said with the arts though, when you look at cities or whatever, like why live anywhere? I mean, like, and that's the thing I didn't fully understand until I got into it or whatever. It's like, because at the end of the day, like you have everybody has a 9 to 5. Every city has a 9 to 5 right now. Now, as you know, cities grow or whatever, like people, it's like, all right, I have choices, right? I can go to this city, that city, or whatever. What has something to offer after 5 o'clock? You know what I mean? Like, why am I going to, you know what I mean? Like, that's what people need that. People want something to do outside of that. Like, yeah, I can make a good bit of money here, but what am I going to do after 5 o'clock? And the art scene, and worldwide, arts are what your entertainment is art. Yeah. And if you don't have entertainment where you're at, then you're just making money and dying.
Are you guys doing live podcasts yet? How often do you do them?
As often as possible.
Yeah, we're like once or twice a month at this point.
Sorry for not knowing that. You guys, that to me is like, that's where I think where it's going to be at. Like, because like there used to be what was basically a podcast. They would do it like the Cabaret Theater and stuff back in the day. But like I envision that being a thing where like, First Fridays live at the arcade, 3 podcasts in a row. Like that's where like this medium I think is going to be going in Pittsburgh, which is cool. And apparently it's already happening. So
live podcasting, it is reflective of the progression. Like it starts off and people are very weird about it. They're like, what the hell are they doing?
Right.
And then people get more and more into it. And by the end of it, people are coming up to the table like, hey, thank you guys for coming. I'm like, all right, well, because you wasn't like that at the beginning of the podcast.
We were at Brew Hall yesterday, and like I walked in, and it was like, and that's the thing, you see a scene because with stand up, you have more control. I know who I am. I have my bit or whatever. Like I know, just with a podcast, you don't have. It's just a conversation. You don't know where the conversation is going to go, and you don't know how the audience is going to react to that. But when it goes well, it's like it's amazing. But like I said, I mean, I think that this city is like you said, it has gone in a different place in the last 10 years. And I think that you have done a great job of cultivating, a great many of the artists.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, man. It's an honor for us to help out in any way.
Yeah, I mean, like I met Bill, and like it was Bill Crawford. It was like, oh, Bill Crawford. I did a show with him at Ham Bones, and it just happened to be on it, and I just was like, hey, I talked to him. I was like, hey, I'm just comic kind of, maybe you want to do a show, and he's like. Yeah, and it's so down.
Bill's legit. He's authentic. Yeah,
and when you hear personalities like on TV or radio, and you see those, they're larger than life, and you don't know how and you know what I mean. And then when you find out that they're just like cool fucking people,
regular people, man,
like that is a whole nother. And then coming into the studio and like the first time, and every time we come in there, it's the back and forth. Like we're able to just have a good time because the atmosphere that you cultivate is a good time. It's like, hey, just sit back, have a, and it's amazing.
Thanks. I think that goes back to what you guys were saying earlier. Like, if anybody didn't allow that environment, someone would be like, hey, man, why are you being a dick? Like, chill out. No, but it is our honor to be able to like serve that purpose, kind of like you guys are doing here. So continued success to you, man. Thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it.
So for the listeners who, if you're under a rock and you're not aware, let them know where they can find you, where they can listen to you.
102.5 is the FM frequency, and online at DVE.com or iHeartRadio.com, which used to be Clear Channel, and everybody hated Clear Channel, so they said, let's put a big heart on the signal up front and see how that goes. And everyone forgot about it.
Yeah, Clear Channel sounds like bootleg cable. Yeah. It feels like the box. You know how in the hood you used to have a box? You ain't have cable. You had the box. That's what Clear Channel feels like.
Yeah. It used to be the evil empire. Now we're iHeartRadio.
Yeah, iHeartRadio. No, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
And
next time we'll drink more. I was drinking before I got here, so I'm
still in recovery, so.
Oh, yeah, man. Now, by the way, I didn't make a point of saying how happy I am to just see you.
Well, thank you.
Like, that was a scary moment, and Bill called me, I'm like, the next day after he'd heard, and we were kind of like, oh, man. So I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but so glad you're here doing well.
You have to go through that in life. You ain't lived till you had something.
You don't have to go through a car crash.
Not a car crash, but something.
I don't know who told you
car
that.
Crash
that is fucked up.
Car crash is something to some people, but other people have other things. Hey, listen, it might be you might have came early with the chick of your dreams. That might feel like a car crash.
I've been in so many car wrecks. They should call me Dale Earnhardt.
If you're in Cali, if you're anywhere in the country, they are on iHeartRadio, so you can be on the internet and listen. It is an amazing. It is one of the establishments in the comedy music scene nationally. Like this is it's one of the jewels that we appreciate in Pittsburgh. You know
I appreciate you saying
one
that.
of the things that people that in Pittsburgh we do well. Whenever you're listening to various folks and they go Pittsburgh and they're like, DVE, we go there or whatever. It's like, you know what I mean? So we appreciate that. We really do appreciate you coming on,
that's
and we appreciate everything that you've done to help cultivate what we're being able to do here. We wouldn't be here without
Yeah,
somebody
you would.
coming
You'd be
in.
fine.
This is one of our mentors.
Like I said, because Whammo ain't doing this shit.
These are big bros in it. These are big bros in the game, man. So we're honored to have you.
Fuck Whammo.
You know, A for effort though. Whammo.
They get
See, goddamn, don't let them start. Tell them where they can find us. We were ending so well. Tell them where they can find us because you started to get on your shit.
Yeah. So if you're looking for us,
that was one of the cues. See how it's more straightforward here.
If you're looking for us, you can find us on fuckwhammo.com. But other than that,
I got
EpicCastNetwork.com. I know you do. I don't. EpicCastNetwork.com/PartnersPod. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and Google Play under Drinking Partners.
All right. Hey, listen, we want to thank our guest again, Randy Baumann. Make sure you check out DVE if you haven't. All right, 102.5, where you get them on iHeartRadio. Hey, this is Drinking Partners. Drinking Partners is the crew. Epicast is the family. And we out of here.